Hello, everybody. A very warm welcome to this webinar from GMATwiz on in-depth reading strategy. And I'll just wait to ask all of you if you guys can hear me clearly. Am I loud and clear to all of you guys? Do let me know. And also let me know where you are attending this webinar from. Where are you? At what level of preparation are you at? And in general, just a warm hello quickly so that we can get started with this session, guys. So I can see a lot of you are already there. It would be wonderful if I could hear back from you. And in the meantime, let me quickly also tell you a little bit about myself and then get you started with the webinar itself. So my name is Sunita and I will be your host for this entire evening. I have mentored hundreds and hundreds of students. I've scored the 99th percentile in my section, and I love teaching. I love teaching. I love finding solutions to the problems students face. That's a little bit, difficult to get started. But let me see. Hi, Abhinav. So Abhinav has joined us from UK. No preps till now. All right. So Abhinav, which means basically this is going to be a good starting ground for you. The others, guys, yes, it would be lovely to know from where you're attending this webinar. And while you're at it, let me quickly also set the agenda for today. So what we're going to talk about today is the mental block that most of us have against RC. And I'm pretty sure that most of us do really have this mental block. We're going to talk just for 2-3 minutes on this. And then we're going to talk about the improvement strategy to be applied to make sure that you score really high on RC. RC is a very, very important area, a huge weightage given to the RC questions on GMAT SC, on GMAT exam, and therefore we're going to talk about the improvement strategy there. We're going to talk about the time-saving irony. A lot of students say that RCs are very time-consuming. I'm going to read very fast, otherwise I won't be able to complete the exam. And therefore, in trying to read fast, they actually don't read fast. So we're going to talk about the time-saving irony as well. And of course, through all of this, we're going to solve lots of difficult questions. So with that, let me set the ball rolling. Let me see who else have joined us. Wonderful. So we already have Abhinav, Rishabh, Mia, Naina, Anil, Rajiv, Ashish, Hashmi, Vijay, JD. So we've got people from all over the world. Okay, and Saurabh. Great, guys. So let me get started with the first factor, and that is the mental block. You guys could help me here. Could you guys quickly share what troubles you about RCs? What troubles most of you about RCs? Yes, I'm sure everybody is troubled by RCs. Pretty sure about that. So let me hear from you. Hi, Shrey. Yes, guys, what is it about RCs that gets at you? You think, oh, RCs. Come on, quickly. So hi, Christian. So Christian is joined us from Peru. All right, Mia, thank you. Ardal. So Mia says lengthy paragraphs. Okay, so basically we're talking about the length of the text. All right. Rajiv says time. Well, yes. Jaideep says particular kinds of questions, especially say detailed question and accept question. All right. And then let me see. Arnold says blanking out. Okay, so Arnold, I totally get that. Right in the middle of the RC, you're reading the whole thing and suddenly you're like, okay, where was I? So yes, I understand that, blanking out. And Ashish says main idea of the passage, losing track. Anil, so I'm sure Anil and Arnold are on the same page. So Nikhil, this is okay. The CR question on RC, which is what we call the application based question. So most of the time, what I'm getting is time consuming. Don't understand the passage, lose track. Shrey says forget information. Tushar says keeping track of lengthy set of information. So most of you guys, let me actually summarize all your pain points. Okay, passages that you don't know about. Okay, I am okay with economics and business, but science puts me off. All right, I'm okay with science, but I don't know what to do with humanities. So, unfamiliar genre, poor recall, as some of you were saying just now, close answer choices. Again, I've come across so many students who say, okay, I'm able to bring it down to the last two options and then I mark the wrong one. What happens? And of course, time consuming. Because of all this, there is a sort of block in your mind even before you read the passage. Okay. And therefore, we try different techniques to achieve that success. Somebody says, oh, just quickly skim the passage and then go to the questions and then come back to the passage from the question. Somebody says, read the first line, read the last line, get a gist, and then go to the question. That's going to help you save time. Somebody says, concentrate on the first and last sentence of each paragraph, and then you go to the questions. And somebody says, read the question first and then search for the answer. Do these work? No, they don't work. Why do they not work? Why do they not work, guys? Can you tell me why do they not work? Thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much for sharing your fear there. Exactly, Shrey. Reading the questions first does not work. So why do you think these strategies don't work? Come on. I'm sure all of you have tried this, a number of times, and I think you must have. So why do you think they don't work, guys? Come on, quickly. Let's not waste any more time on this. So Mia says a lot of time is consumed. Yeah, Mia, of course. But can you tell me why this doesn't work? Abhinav says, because you say so. No, I'm not saying so, Abhinav. All the students who have shared their fear factors, they are indirectly saying, well, RCs are a trouble spot. So yes, Anil says, induces question biasness, says Rajiv. Anil says, we look for answers. Okay, let me actually answer that quickly because otherwise it's just going to go on. What happens is we are definitely looking for answers, but all these different methods, what they really do at the end of the day is cost us a lot of time, and we often compromise accuracy because we're not confident of the answer that we're marking. All this happens because of we don't have a precise understanding of the passage. We've read the passage quickly and we've rushed to the answer to look for the answer choices, and then we haven't got that understanding of the passage that is required to answer these questions. Okay, so lack of precise understanding of the passage is actually the core reason behind all this. So here is a passage, guys. I'm not going to waste any more of your time. Shobit, the session is 1.5 hours. Let's look at this passage, guys. I am going to just stop my camera and let you look at this passage. So I want you guys to read this passage, answer that question, and how much time do you think I should give you? I think I should give you 3 minutes, 3.5 minutes. I'll be fair. Okay. So just one paragraph and one question. There's one small request, guys. Do not start putting your answers until I ask you. I'll tell you when to start posting your answers. Till then, just read this paragraph and attempt that question. Okay, and then we're going to get into the improvement strategies. All right, guys. So let's get started. I'm going to mute myself for the next 3.5 minutes. And as I requested, please hold on to your questions. I'll tell you when to post them. All right. Thank you so much. Let's get started. And I'm going to mute myself. 3.5 minutes, guys. I can't delete the logo, but let me try rearranging the paragraph so that you guys can read it. Just give me a moment here. I'll just reduce the font size. I think that should do it. Just give me a moment, guys. Yep, let me move this down. Does that take care of the logo? I think so. Okay, the logo is still obstructing, so let me take care of that further. Hold on a second, guys. I think now this should be fine. Yep. Guys, I have kind of arranged. I hope this is clear to all of you. Welcome, guys. So, Saurav, you have to read the passage and answer the question. Uh, I don't know what you mean by we don't understand the passage. Yes, Saurav, we don't, but the idea is to try to read it. For those of you who just joined us, please read this paragraph and solve this question. I'll tell you when to post the answers, and we're going to talk about how to improve reading and comprehension. Another 15 seconds, guys, and you can start posting your answers. Another 15 seconds, that's almost up now. So, those of you who have been able to complete reading this and have solved the question, you can start posting answers. All right. So Ashish says B, Karthik says B, Shrey E. Yes, let me have some more answers. There are a lot more of you out there, guys. Thank you so much for sharing your answers. So Shrey E, Tushar. Okay, let me just read out quickly. That's B, E, C, E, B. Jaideep, C or D, not sure. D, Vivian says C. So I've got B, C, E, and just one confusion with D. Arnold says D. Okay. So there are two people who believe in D, and then the rest of, okay. Chandan B, Nirmala B. So it seems B is a big time winner here. Okay. So let me guys get started with so Vijay B, Richa B, Abhinav D. All right, guys. Now, whatever be the answer, we are going to discover that together. But the primary purpose of today's session is to see how to derive that answer with the least amount of confusion. Okay. Saurav says E as well. So, guys, thank you so much for sharing your answers. Thank you so much for that. And now I'm going to get started with how to read this passage. And this is the most important part of this webinar, guys. Okay. I'm going to demonstrate how at GMATwiz we focus on involved and evolved reading. All right. Which means the manner in which we engage ourselves while reading the passage and the manner in which we come up with an evolved understanding of the passage. This is what I'm going to demonstrate to you. Just bear with me. All right, guys, I'll give you enough time to ask questions. So here I get started. Okay. But before I get started, guys, there are just some quick thoughts. All right. Did you guys think the language was very dense? Did you guys think it was very tough to understand? Did this happen with you? That even if you did not understand something, you just continued reading forward? And did you feel at the end that you had a rough understanding of the passage? Okay, they were talking about some royalists, some patriarchalism, some feminist, and all. Were you confused between two option choices? Yes, that I can see from some of your answers. And did you end up rereading the passage or some parts of it, guys? So if you agree with any one of these, just say a quick yes in the chat. A quick yes in the chat if you agree with any one of these. Any one of these thoughts that, or any one of these experiences that you underwent. If you underwent at least even one of these things, just post a yes. Okay. So everybody says yes. And when I read this passage for the first time, I too experienced it. That was way before I started teaching. So I too felt this. Shahbaz says all five. Okay. All right. Let's get started, guys. So thank you so much. Here's this paragraph, and I'm going to show you how this should have been read. Okay. It is an odd but indisputable fact. I'm going to stop here. At GMATwiz, we encourage not to read 40, 50 words in one breath. Do not do that, guys. No one can understand the meaning of 40 to 50 words in one single read. So always read your long sentences in small, segments and understand three things about that segment. What is the segment saying? The what? Who is saying it? For example, is it the author? Is it anybody other than the author, the third party? And finally, why is it being stated? As in, the author of the passage is giving this information here, why? So these are the three W's that I would encourage you to inculcate in your reading. So I'm going to do that. It is an odd but indisputable fact. Who is saying this? It seems it's the author's opinion. Okay. What does it mean? The author finds something odd but does not dispute. Okay, he or she calls it a fact, but indisputable fact. Why is this statement given here? At this stage, when I'm reading the first part or first line of the sentence, I can only guess. I can only guess that maybe the author is going to discuss this fact or this oddity. I don't know. So it is an odd but indisputable fact that, okay, so now we're going to talk about that fact, which is going to come after this. And you will notice I'm going to use a lot of sentence correction, um, processes here. The 17th century English women, okay, these 17th century English women who are generally regarded as among the forerunners. What do we mean by forerunners? We are talking about maybe the founders or the pioneers or something of modern feminism. Okay, so these 17th century English women are basically the founders of modern feminism as it is today, are almost all identified. Are here is a verb. Who are almost all identified with the royalist side? These 17th century English women. Okay, that's the core of this sentence. So, what are we saying so far? The author finds it odd that these founders of modern feminism, these women, they were all with the royalist side. Now, I don't know what is royalist, but it is definitely one side or one team or God knows what, if I don't know. In the conflict between royalists and parliamentarians, known as the English Civil Wars. Now, if you know a bit about the royalists and parliamentarians in Great Britain, it would be good. But let's say we don't. What can we understand maximum? We can understand that there was some conflict between these two groups. And in this conflict, we had all the founders of modern feminism, all the women coming from the royalist side. So I have understood the what, I have understood the who, and I haven't really understood the why. So if I summarize this part, the author finds a fact odd but true. Now, guys, this is just for your benefit. I'm not asking you to write all of this down when you're reading the passage. If you want, you can make notes in shorthand. If you don't. Okay, you do you, I'll do me. So here the idea is, but then I am kind of summarizing the sentence in my mind. I mean, it was such a long sentence. It started here, it ended here. So crux is author finds a fact odd but true. What is that fact? The founders of modern feminism, they were all royalists and they were not parliamentarians. That's the odd fact. Okay. How many of y'all read like this? Come on, guys, share with me. How many of y'all read like this? Yes, Ray. Royalists are people who believe in monarchy, and parliamentarians are people who believe in democracy. All right. Um, it's a unique form of government in Great Britain even today. So Shrey says he reads like this. Very good. Others, guys, how many of you read like this? The way I read it, dividing the sentence and grasping the information bit by bit. How many of y'all did this? And you don't have to, you have to say what you did. Just be honest. Yes, Shrey, constitutional monarchy. Yes, guys, how many of y'all read like this, the way I read it just now? If you did, say yes. If you did not, just say no. That's it. Because this is going to be the core of our process, guys. You need to read by breaking a long sentence into small portions. So, yes, how many of you all read like this? I don't see any. Okay, a lot of you are being, thank you so much for being honest there, Vivian, Karthik. So, great, guys, let me get started. Let me move ahead. Now, I'm going to start with the second sentence. And the second sentence starts with a since. So there's a lot of information hidden in these transition words. So we were talking about an odd fact, and now here the author starts the next sentence with a since, where he or she could be giving the meaning. So since royalist ideology is often associated with the radical patriarchalism of 17th century political theorist Filmer. Now that's a long sentence, that's a mouthful. I'll tell you how I'm going to reduce this sentence. It says, since royalist ideology associated with patriarchalism of Filmer. Look how I have shrunk the sentence after reading it completely. In my mind, the crux is, because royalist ideology is related to patriarchalism of Filmer. Now, let's say I don't know what is patriarchalism. I can see clearly that from here till here they are going to define patriarchalism. So I'll read that, but for now, let me read the rest of the sentence, which is the main information. Since royalist ideology is associated with patriarchalism of Filmer, that is why historians have been puzzled by the fact that royalist women wrote criticism of subordination of women. Okay, hold on. So I've read a lot of things. I've got to kind of now could understand the what, who, and why. So here the author is telling us royalist ideology was related to Filmer's patriarchalism. And what is this patriarchalism? Let us now read this. A patriarchalism that equates family and kingdom. Okay, so this patriarchalism believes family is the same as a kingdom, all right? Asserts the divinely ordained absolute power of the king, and by analogy means similarity of the male head of the household. Okay, so if in short, Filmer's patriarchalism is all about family equals to, you know, kingdom, and king power, king's power equals to male heads. Okay, that's the opposite, my bad. And the male head's power is the same as the king's power. In short, this whole idea, patriarchalism, is about male dominance. Correct? Okay, so patriarchalism is male dominance, and royalists were believed to be associated with this idea. Okay, and the royalist women wrote criticism, I'm going a bit slow here, of women subordination, which means the royalists are supposed to be following male dominance, but the royalist women are against male dominance. That is why they are criticizing women's subordination. All right? And they are writing assertions of women's equality with men. So here we have the odd part. Probably this is the odd part, that royalist women came from a side which believed in male dominance, but these royalist women were founders of modern feminism. They criticized subordination of women. They sought equality of women with men. All right. So I'm just going to remove all of this. Sorry for that bad handwriting, but you get it, right? The meaning. So look at, it took me time to, now it took me time because I'm explaining things to you, but if you're explaining your things to yourself, it won't take so much of time. So in short, what I understand is, because royalist ideology observed absolute male power, historians are puzzled that women who belonged to such a family criticized male power. Okay? All right, so let me now clear all of this up here. All right, let me clear all of this up here. So that's my understanding of the what, who, and why. Let me read further. And guys, just to show you how long a sentence can be on GMAT SC, let me point out to you. This sentence starts here and ends here. I don't know how many words that is. I think nearly 60, 65 words. Okay, so just goes to show that you need to break down your sentences to read them. All right, let's continue. Some historians have questioned. So author is now again presenting another other historian's view. Okay, have questioned the facile equation. Let's say you don't know the meaning of facile. If you don't know, you don't know. Either you read the context and understand the meaning, or you just dump that and continue without it. Facile, by the way, means a very, very simple. Okay. So some historians have questioned means that they don't agree with the equation of royalist ideology with Filmarian patriarchalism. Okay, so there are historians who don't believe that they don't believe royalists followed patriarchalism. Okay, all right. And indeed, who is iterating this here? The author. So author also probably agrees with them. There may have been no consistent differences between royalists and parliamentarians on issues of family organization and women's political rights. Okay, so the author is saying, not sure, but he or she says there might not have been any differences between the two sides that we were talking about, which means it is possible that royalists did not believe in patriarchalism and parliamentarians also did not believe in patriarchalism. This is possible. But look at this but here, transition word. But in that case, so if this has been the case, then one would expect early feminists, that means these founders of feminism, to be equally divided between two sides. Okay. So the author expected to find these feminists coming from the parliamentarian side as well, but it's odd that all of them came from the royalist side, given that royalists were supposed to be these patriarchalists. So let me sum that up. Some historians doubt that royalists followed Filmer's ideology. Author supports this. Notice how I'm noting down the opinions. Historians are puzzled. Author finds. Some historians doubt. Keep track. Note the opinions here. So author supports some of these historians and says there may have been no difference between the two sides mentioned here. Now the author, in that last sentence, rounds up and concludes the oddity. What is the oddity? If there had been no differences between the two sides, then half of the women feminists should have come from the parliamentarian side. This is the oddity. Okay. So if I have to summarize the paragraph in a single sentence, I would say, given the background on the ideologies of the two sides, it is odd that all the 17th century English women, okay, were royalists. So guys, let me know if this is clear to all of you. So Anu, sorry guys, I was not able to answer your questions because I couldn't see the screen. I was explaining the passage to all of you, showing you the involved and evolved reading. So I'll just quickly look at your questions here. Okay. Yes, Hemant, I will look at your query. Just give me a moment. So Hemant says my passages are as big as Eiffel Tower. Hemant, you'll have to learn to manage time, but before that, you have to learn the skill of reading the sentence properly. And it's not a skill that you can learn overnight. It will take time. All right. Anu, you will get GMAT style passages for reading practice. You will get it on GMAT Club. You can actually try the OG passages. And outside of that, you can actually read from some of the American publications. so that you get a feel of the same style or standard of language. All right. So, yes, Hemant, I hope I have been able to answer your question. All right. I was not always a 99 percentiler. It also took me some time to reach there. I've made all the mistakes that a lot of us make. So, Jaideep, does the author believe that Robert Filmer is the basis for? No, Jaideep. He doesn't believe that. Remember, if you look at that sentence, it's given that it is believed. That means somebody else believes it. Author doesn't believe that. Author is quoting others. What the author does believe is, if the royalist women came from a household which believed in royal, male dominance, how is it that they were against that? And then, if the two sides, parliamentarians and royalists, believed in the same ideologies, then how come women, the forerunners, don't come from that side as well? All right. So, guys, let me now take you to the question itself. I think that's what we are all waiting for. So, the question asked us, what is the primary purpose of mentioning Robert Filmer? Okay, now we encourage you to pre think a little bit about the answer choices, even before you go to the answer choices, if it is a specific question. Now, this is a very specific question, it is specific to the reason Filmer has been mentioned, and therefore we can pre think a bit. Okay, Filmer was mentioned. Okay, so Filmer was mentioned to introduce patriarchalism. Okay, that is why the name Filmer was used. But why was patriarchalism introduced? Patriarchalism was introduced to tell us that that was the ideology probably the royalists held. Why was the ideology of royalists introduced? To tell us that royalist ideology was about absolute power of the male. And why was the absolute power of the male brought into the picture? To tell us that royalist women wrote against male power. So, all in all, the purpose of referring to Filmer was to show that beliefs of the royalist women were in contrast to royalist ideology. All right. So, if I have to pre think an answer choice, I would say Filmer was referred to in order to kind of focus our attention on the contrast between the royalist ideology, which was the Filmer's patriarchalism, and the ideology of the royalist feminists. Okay, guys, is this pre thinking clear? Is this pre thinking clear to you guys? Please answer a yes if it is. If it is not, you're welcome to ask questions. Do let me know if you have any queries here, guys. I would be more than happy to explain this. If it is clear, just let me know clear. So I would move ahead. Okay, thank you, Karthik. Thank you, Nirmala. Thank you for letting me know that. Okay, great. Let me. So now if we look at the options, choice A, hardly anybody chose this. So I'm not going to dwell too much on this. Clearly here, the idea was not to show that royalist ideology was more radical than the other historians, all right? It was just radical word was just mentioned as an adjective of the entire patriarchalism idea, all right? So if in case you just want to ask yourself, is the author's intention to indicate that royalist ideology was more radical? No, therefore this is out of scope. Qualify. Guys, what is the meaning of qualify? Most of you marked B as the correct answer. Let's see if this is the correct answer or not. But before that, and without Googling for the meaning, tell me what is the meaning of qualify? What is the meaning of qualify to you? Because a lot of you have chosen B as the answer. Shrey says qualify means to support. Yes? Please let me know. Jaideep says qualify means to weaken. So we've got two contrasting meanings of qualify. Yes, guys, the others, what does qualify mean? I'm waiting for some more answers, guys. And answer from your heart because a lot of you chose this. So I'm sure you must have thought something about the word qualify. Chandan says conclude. So conclude, support, weaken. Yes, any more meanings here, guys? Nirmala says, so Nirmala, that's be entitled to a particular benefit or privilege by fulfilling a necessary condition. That is one of the meanings of qualify, but doesn't fit here. So Saurav says agree. Karthik says advocate, which means support. Agree, support. Ascertain. No, guys. Qualified does not mean support. Qualified does not mean advocate. Qualified does not mean to weaken. Qualified does not mean to ascertain. All right. Abhinav, explain the claim. No. So let me tell you what qualify really means. Okay. Qualify means to limit the strength or meaning of something. Okay. If I'm giving you to give you an example of a qualified statement, India can become let's say India can become the leading exporter of cotton if the government subsidizes the production of cotton, let's say. So you see here, India can become the leading producer of cotton or exporter of cotton. Uh, all right, this is a prediction, but it is kind of restricted, to the condition that if Indian government subsidizes the production. So qualify means to put a restriction or put a constraint or put a limit on something. So ask yourselves, does the author want to limit the strength or meaning of any claim? Which claim? Patriarchalism formed the basis of ideology. Does the author want to restrict the meaning of this claim? Okay, no. The author does not want to restrict the meaning of this claim. Remember our pre-thinking here. Filmer was referred in order to focus our attention on the contrast between the royalist ideology and the ideology of the royalist feminists. It was not mentioned to limit the meaning of patriarchalism formed the basis of royalist ideology. So B is not the answer. It's just a distorted form of some familiar idea already mentioned. Okay, so B is not the answer because qualify means to limit or restrict the meaning of something, which is not what the author is doing here. B is not the answer. The next favorite answer was C. Question. Now, what does question mean? Question means to raise doubts, disagree, challenge something. Ask yourselves, is the author doubting the fact that early feminists were all royalist? Question the view that. Which view? This is an indisputable fact, guys. Okay, these 17th century English women are all identified with the royalist side is an indisputable fact. So the author is not doubting the fact. This is the opposite to the premise, and we know we can't doubt the premise. So C is also not the correct answer. The correct answer is D, guys. Look at how it matches your pre-thinking if you have been doing your analysis correctly. Filmer was referred to in order to focus our attention on the contrast between royalist ideology and ideology of royalist feminists. This says highlight, which means focus. Apparent tension means contrast. And between royalist ideology and ideas of early feminists, bingo. So this is absolutely in line with our pre-thinking and is the correct choice. If you read in the involved and evolved manner right from the beginning, it's always going to be easier to eliminate choices. So you might take time to read your passage, but you'll hardly take any time to eliminate choices. E, very few of you mark this, but again, remember, the author actually might have been saying that there was no difference between the royalists and there might have been no difference between royalists and parliamentarians. Also, the point of Filmer was not to argue that they held conflicting conflicting ideas. The point of patriarchalism was to show a contrast between these royalist feminist women and the royalist ideology. So E is also not the answer. So guys, while you are at it, let me look at some of the questions here if you have. Absolutely, Abhinav. I'm just so glad you put it in such a simple way. Abhinav has put it in such a simple way. Unlearn and not be scared to relearn. Abhinav, I too had to unlearn a lot of things before getting where I have. So absolutely. Absolutely. Shrey, it's not going to be okay. The claim to be qualified. I get it, Nirmala. All right, guys. So now, let me quickly post a link to the free trial version of our course if you're interested in looking more closely at the course content. So I'm just going to quickly post the link to the free trial version. And in case you are interested, you can kind of access the free trial version through that link. The link is there on your screens right now, guys. So, Filmarian patriarchalism, Jaideep, you have to think in a processed manner. First of all, Filmer was mentioned to mention patriarchalism. Patriarchalism was mentioned to point out royalist ideology. Royalist ideology was mentioned to point out that women from the royalist household did not agree with that, you know. So, Abhinav, I would advise against dedicating 12 hours, max 5 hours, 4 to 5 hours, and that too in small slots. Okay, 12 hours, you're just going to cook up your brain and not really do anything worthwhile with it. I'm also going to quickly post a link using which you can um, set up a free call with our strategy experts if you are stuck with your prep, or if you want to begin your prep and you don't know what to do. So you can get in touch with our experts by booking a free call on that using this link. The link is there right now on your screens. So Jaideep, the last sentence was there to shoot down what other historians are thinking. Here we are not saying what Filmer was thinking. All right. So Abhinav, we are there on Facebook. Just look for GMATwiz strategy. Okay, Abhinav, good to know that. All right, guys. So let me now proceed with the rest of it. We've got some more questions to solve. But right now, let me quickly sum up what we just did. The key difference between reading speed versus comprehension speed. If you focus on this, if you focus on reading speed, you will compromise comprehension. And we don't want to do that. So don't focus on this. Okay, focus on this. That's going to lead you where we want to be, where we want to be. Involved and evolved reading, the method that we just saw. In short, it means you think like the author, think what the author is trying to tell you through the text. Break sentences into small chunks, derive the meaning. For the subsequent sentences, keep relating back. So for deriving the meaning, ask what, ask who is saying it. For relating back, ask why. Note down the transition words and conjunctions to help you relate back. And try to summarize as you read along. If you're doing these 2, 3 things, you will get a very clear understanding of what you're reading, and that is going to help you solve passages with accuracy. Okay. And at GMATwiz, we teach you exactly where to pause, what to do with complex words, how to note down facts and opinions, how to differentiate between the author's opinion and the other opinions, and all in all, therefore, to understand the intent. Okay. We've dedicated tons of time, okay, a huge amount of time just to help you build this skill. And then only we go forward, we go ahead with teaching you how to solve certain questions related to that. Okay, in very, very small. So, for example, today you guys were confused about qualify. We have this video lesson where we teach you the difference between words like evaluate, assess, examine, describe, discuss, challenge, qualify, and so on and so forth. Here's the second passage. Now, this is a GMATwiz passage. The earlier passage was an OG passage. All right. And this is a GMATwiz passage. Let me just adjust uh, the font here so that this logo does not disturb you. Just give me a moment, guys. So I hope font can be. Okay, I have reduced the font, guys. So I hope now you're able to see this clearly. Okay, there's one word which is still missing. All right, let me do a little more editing here. I think that is helpful, right? You're most welcome, Vamsi. All right, guys. So I'm going to give you again 3.5 minutes. No, I'm going to give you 3 minutes this time because the passages, the paragraphs are less dense this time. All right. So I'm going to mute myself and please, guys, even if you've solved the question, just hold on to your answers till I ask you to post them. Thank you for doing that. Let me mute myself. 3 minutes. Get started. You're welcome, Nirmala. Most welcome. And best of luck. All right, guys, you can start posting your answers. All right, let me read out these answers. So, Dhanush believes it's B, Arnold believes it's B, Rajiv B, Aman C, Vinayak B, Vivian B. All right, so far B seems to be the favorite here. Let's wait for some more answers. There are a lot more of you out there, guys. So I'm sure your Richa believes it's A. Okay. Yes, guys. Shobhit C. So we've got um, voters for A, B, and C so far. Balakrishna B. Yes, guys. Thank you so much for posting your answers, and I would love to have some more answers before I launch into my, explanation. So okay. So yes, yes, guys. A few more answers would really be good. Did you guys try to read in an involved and evolved manner this time around? Did you try that? It was definitely a simpler passage, and that's deliberate here. But do let me know if you try to read it in a different way this time around. Guys, would love to have some more answers here. I can see there are over around 50, more than 50 of you here. Priyanshu says A. Okay, thank you, Priyanshu. Should I wait some more time? Because I think I've given a lot of time here. Okay, so I get it. Let me quickly get started with reading this passage. All right, so most of you are rooted for A, rooted for B, some of you rooted for A, C, and then Shahbaz also has D. Thank you, Shahbaz. Great. So let me get started with the reading of this. And once again, I'm going to kind of follow the involved and evolved reading. So when you read the first paragraph, okay, to put things simply means the author is going to simplify things for us. Induction emphasizes the individual. So if I don't know the meaning of induction, okay, I should not panic, but wait for the passage to explain it. So there is something called induction, and it lays emphasis on the individual, the single person. Whereas, so here, whereas is a transition word. I now understand that this is going to bring up a contrast. Whereas deduction begins with generalizations. Okay, so the other thing that is being compared here is deduction. So the author is talking about two things, induction and deduction, and the author is drawing a contrast between the two. Induction focuses on the individual person, deduction begins with generalizations. All right. Science largely began with a focus on deduction. Now, the author, after introducing a contrast between these two, talks about how what came first. I think science began with deduction, with focus on deduction. Probably the author is trying to tell us what came first. All right, so let's see. Trying to find universal laws. So science was trying to find universal laws. Science was hoping to explain as much about the world as possible, and Therefore, science was using deduction. So now I understand probably this induction and deduction are some sort of processes, and science used the process of deduction while trying to explore the world. All right. In the 19th century. So from beginning of science, we are now down to the 19th century. See, there's a timeline that we are following. In the 19th century, generalizations means deduction, reached a pinnacle of overuse. Okay, so generalization was being used a lot, particularly for explaining human characteristics. So remember, deduction was used by science to explain things about the world. Now we are told it was being used in the 19th century. It was being overused in the 19th century to explain human characteristics. And then we are being also told that while deduction became disfavored, so while here is another transition word telling us that while deduction became disfavored because of those missteps, which missteps? The overuse, I guess. Induction rose to favor. All right. So, two things happened. Deduction faded into the background, induction rose to favor. So, now deduction began as the favorite, but then later on, induction became the favorite. All right, great. And this happened because induction had more quantitative techniques for describing the individual objects of study. So now we know that induction was all about individually studying the objects. Deduction was all about studying generalizations. So you can draw all these inferences. In short, if I summarize, the passage introduces two terms. Induction stresses on specific or particular or individual. Deduction starts from making generalizations. By the 19th century, too much of generalizations had been used. Subsequently, induction gained popularity. Summary: the author talks about two processes, induction and deduction, and shows how the former gained favor over the other. This paragraph was hardly any rocket science. But the real trouble starts here. The problem of induction. So, after discussing or after bringing out the contrast between these two processes and talking about how one faded into the background and the other came to the forefront, the author is now talking about the problem of induction specifically. What is the problem? Is the impossibility of observing every individual case. So, induction cannot observe every case. Okay. In other words, means the author is going to explain what the author means by saying impossibility of observing every individual case. In other words, there is always uncertainty about what hasn't been directly observed. So, uncertainty hasn't been directly observed and impossible to observe everything. You know, when I do this passage, I think of let's say the author is studying 1,000 cases. Okay, there are 1,000 cases to be studied. Okay, so if and this through induction, let's say 1,000 cases to be studied through induction. What the author is able to do, according to the author, let's say we are able to observe 700 cases, but 300 cases we are not able to observe. This is what the author is saying so far. So, again, a transition word, a conclusion marker to help fill the gaps. So, because 300 cases have not been observed, there are certain gaps. We make generalizations based on what has been observed. 700 cases have been observed, so generalizations are made on what we have observed, and these generalizations are used to fill the gaps of those 300 unobserved cases. All right, so this is the problem of induction. What is the problem of induction? You have to generalize. We have to generalize, right? We can't observe everything. And generalize means we have to use deduction. So, in short, this is the way you have to draw inferences as you move along, guys. How many of you all read it like this, guys? How many of you all read it like this? Because What we think that, okay, let's read the passage quickly and go to the question, and then we'll draw inferences, whatever inferences we need to draw. It doesn't work like that. You have to infer as you read along, because you don't know what the questions will be on. When you come back for the inferences, it becomes doubly difficult. So let's quickly clear this up all here. So till here, we are talking about what is the problem of induction. And after that, the author starts talking about, in modern science, these generalizations or predictive guides, they become scientific models. There are different types of models. One of the most popular models is empirical model. And defining a model as empirical means what? Empirical model is built from observed data. Okay. And the purpose of this empirical model is to help researcher make predictions, and application of this empirical model is deduction. So ultimately, the problem of induction is it is also kind of involving deduction. That's what it all boils down to. Let me summarize this paragraph quickly. So what we are really saying here is, the paragraph talks about the problem with induction. It cannot observe each and every case, but I'm guessing we need to draw conclusions about the case studies in any which way. Thus, there is always a gap that is to be fulfilled, and to cover the gap, generalizations must be drawn, and these generalizations are they produce models which help to make deductions. So if we summarize both the paragraphs, okay, the flow of the passage, the second paragraph talks about the problem with the process of induction and how induction helps develop generalized predictive models that are used for deduction. So flow of the passages, author introduces two terms first and then shows how one gained favor over the other. This was what the first paragraph was doing. And then the author describes the process of induction and then talks about its problems. So when you're reading a passage, this should be your process, break down sentences, understand the meaning of the sentences, join together the segments, understand the core ideas of the paragraph, and draw a para summary. Similarly, do for the next paragraph, and then combine the two paragraph summaries to understand the flow of the passage. Now we're going to go to the question. So the question was, what is the problem of induction? Again, if we pre-think a bit, I've already discussed this with you, that the problem with induction is cannot observe each case. Okay. And there is the feeling of uncertainty about drawing conclusions without studying all the cases. So to cover the gap, generalizations must be drawn. So this is the problem with induction. Problem with induction is it has to somewhat resort to deduction at the end of the day. So with this thought process, we move to the answer choice elimination. Now let's read A. It refers to induction. That's the question stem, right? From the question stem. So induction fails in its observation of individual cases. Now, the sentence in the paragraph says, problem of induction is impossibility of observing every case. Does it mean that it fails in all cases? Because that is what this portion means. It fails in its observation of individual cases, which means all individual cases? Absolutely not. And does it have to depend on speculative measures to fill the gaps? No. They depend on observations. See, we make generalizations that are based on what has been observed, not on speculative measures. So, fail is an extreme word here. Induction does not fail in its specific observations. Okay, we are just saying that it is not possible to observe each case. That does not mean it fails to observe whatever it does observe. So, this is a distortion and not the correct answer. Let's go to B. Its advantage is, so we are first beginning this this answer choice by saying that the advantage of induction is the basis, and the basis is the specific observation of individual cases. But it too has to resort to generalization. This is what we discussed in our pre-thinking, and therefore this is the correct answer. Absolutely. The problem is it cannot study every case, it has to generalize, and that is the problem. So B is the correct answer. A lot of you got that right. I hope those of you who did not share the answer with us, also you are checking your reasoning. He says it cannot draw predictive models unless and until. This is wrong, because even without studying all cases, it is making generalizations and developing the predictive guides and scientific models. All right. So we can't say that it cannot draw up the model unless and until all cases have been studied. Even without studying all cases, um, these predictive models can be drawn by filling in the gaps using the studied cases. So this choice is the opposite of what your paragraph is saying. D, hardly anybody marked here. So all the predictive guides are not built on the basis of imprecise observations. Okay. Some of them are direct observations, some of them are indirect observations. So this is incorrect. He says it is ultimately used for making general predictions. What is used for making general predictions? That is the function of the process of deduction, and that is not the problem of induction, and therefore it is also incorrect. So guys, I know what is going on in your mind. You're thinking all this is going to take a lot of time, isn't it? Isn't this what all of you are thinking? So let me see. Richa is asking some questions here. Richa, sorry, I just switched to this screen. I was using the other screen to explain the passage to you guys. So do you have to deep dive every time? I think, Richa, as you read, understand what you're reading. As you read, draw the inference, simplify information. Okay, you just don't know where the deep diving will come in handy and will not come in handy. All right. So the deep diving should become a kind of intuitive kind of habit. Okay. So the first direct answer here, the fact that induction has limitation of unable to observe each case, generally will not be the correct one. It's correct, but that's not what the first option was saying. The first option was saying it fails to observe individual cases. We wanted to say it fails to observe every individual case. All right. So I hope that clears things up, Richa. Deep diving is required, yes, at least for medium hard, and hard questions. Maybe not for the easy ones, but you won't know which question is easy on the exam. So I'm sure that a lot of you are thinking it's time consuming, guys. Remember, with practice, you learn a skill. This is also a skill, and a skill takes a lot of time when you're learning it, but it takes less time when that has become a skill. All right, it becomes second nature. Then you're able to map the passage, understand the flow, and derive the author's point without much effort. Okay, here's another passage for you guys. I'll show you the question after this, but right now I want you guys to just read the passage. You're welcome, Richa. Just read this passage. This is an official passage, 700 level passage, guys. I am going to show you the question. Not now, but once you have read the passage. You have 4 minutes to read these two paragraphs, and your time starts now. In the meantime, let me just quickly put up the link to the free trial version of the course in case you're interested in taking a closer look at our courses. Oh, yes, I'll resize the passage, Vinayak. My bad. Just give me a moment. All right, guys. So I'm sure you guys have finished reading the passage. In case you haven't, you can still read it when I next bring up. So here's the question that you need to answer. Let me see if the logo is hiding the passage. I think a little bit of resizing will be needed just to make sure the logo does not hide the passage. So let me just do that. So guys, as you solve, you can start posting your answers. Jaideep, per the passage, it's given in simple present tense, so it's all written somewhere, definitely. You guys can post your answers as you solve the question. So I'll just give you another 1.5 minutes to do this. Let's see your answers. So I've got Danush says D, Jaideep says C, Arnold says D. Would be good to have some more answers, guys. Jaideep, here we are talking about scholars observing something about the novelists of the 19th century. All right, so let's see. Jaideep says B can't rule out B. Okay. Shahbaz says E. Buck up, guys. I can see so many of you there, guys. Do share your answers because that helps me to get a feel of what you guys are thinking out there and how I can best explain away your issues. So do share your answers. In the meantime, while you guys are looking at the answers, Vivian A, not so sure though. That's okay, Vivian. Totally okay. Richa also believes it's E. So we've got E, a tentative A, um, tentative B, as Jaideep says, cannot rule it out, but he is thinking of C as well. Arnal says D, Dhanush says D. So A, B, C, D, E, I think we've got all in the running. Great. Okay, guys, I'm going to start explaining. Thank you, Bhavesh. Also says D. Richa says, okay, great. Let me read this passage. Now, it's a particularly convoluted passage, I would say. Aishwarya also believes it's E. And I'll tell you that this passage is convoluted if you're not reading it the right way. Okay, so let me quickly get started on that. Um, all right. Antonia Castaneda, okay, AC for short, has utilized scholarship from women's studies. So she has used women's studies. She has used Mexican American history to do what? To examine 19th century literary portrayals of Mexican women. Okay. In short, what this means is AC has used certain sources to understand how the Mexican women were portrayed, were shown in the 19th century literature. So I am going to sum that up. That author introduces the subject studied by AC. Okay, let me move on. So let us see what AC found out. As Castaneda notes, so now we are being told what AC found. Has utilized means it's present perfect, so it means whatever she used, the outcome of that is still present. Castaneda notes, scholars of women's history observe. So remember, she used women's studies and Mexican history. So she is saying what was mentioned by the scholars of these two. So we're talking about scholars of women history, what they are saying. So she is saying what the scholars of women history are saying. And what are the scholars of women's history saying? They are saying that male novelists of the period, which period? 19th century. And again, we have information between dashes, which we'll read a little later. Male novelists of the period define women solely in their domestic roles of wife and mother. Okay, so in short, AC is saying some scholars are making an observation about male novelists in the US as whole. For these novelists, okay, per these novelists, women were defined solely in their domestic roles of wife and mother. And then we are also told, now if we read the portion between the two dashes, that 19th century was the time when, according to these scholars would mean these scholars of women's history, women's traditional economic role in home-based agriculture. That means they must have been earning money through home-based agriculture, and these women's this whole earning role was threatened by the transition to a factory-based industrial economy. So that means clearly here we are being told what the novelists thought about that period, and these novelists defined women only in their domestic role, probably because this is again my inference, probably because women's economic role was threatened, and therefore these novelists sought to identify women only by their domestic role. Okay, and we're talking about women in general, we're not talking about Mexican women or non-Mexican women. So far we are talking about women in general. So if you look at the green box in which I have summarized data, this is how you need to understand whatever you're reading. That we've got the subject studied by Antonio Castaneda, what she found out about that period. And what she found out about, remember, she was trying to understand the literary portrayal of Mexican women. And what she found out that novelists identified women only in their domestic roles. So this is the way women were portrayed. But was this also the way Mexican women were portrayed? We don't know. Let's read on. Castaneda finds, okay, so we've got another finding of Castaneda, that during the same period that saw non-Hispanic women, now we are categorizing women. If you already know what is Hispanic and non-Hispanic, good. If you don't, wait for the context. Read ahead. Non-Hispanic women being economically displaced by industrialization. So during the same period that these non-Hispanic were being displaced, Hispanic law protected the economic position of Californianas. And who are the Californianas? They are the Mexican women of the territory. All right, so understand, non-Hispanic women are non-Mexican by inference. Non-Hispanic is non-Mexican and Hispanic is Mexican. All right. So what this sentence is telling us is non-Hispanic women, okay, they were suffering economically. Mexican women had their economic rights protected by Hispanic law. All right. They were ensured property rights, inheritance rights equal to those of males. This was not so with the non-Mexican women. So what I understand is domestic roles was for all women, and at the same time we have these Mexican women whose property rights were protected by Hispanic law. Non-Hispanic women suffered economically. All right, this was the difference mentioned by Castaneda. So now we get to understand that she is narrowing down on Mexican women. She's narrowing down, but she still doesn't talk about the literary portrayals. So this paragraph, the author introduces Castaneda's area of research, okay, and explains Castaneda's findings about the Mexican and non-Mexican women. That's about it. All right. Now let's move to the second paragraph. For Castaneda, the laws, which laws? The Hispanic laws that we read in the previous paragraph. Explain a stereotypical. Stereotypical basically means common, something which is overused. Created primarily by male non-Mexican novelists. So the non-Mexicans wrote a typical plot. What was that typical plot? Ambitious non-Mexican merchant, desirous of marrying Californiana. Okay. So ambitious non-Hispanic merchant means somebody who wants to make money but is not a Mexican. That person is interested in marrying these rich Mexican women. This was the plot. So now we are talking about the literary portrayal of Mexican women. Okay, now we are talking about how the Mexican women were portrayed. How were they portrayed? They were portrayed rich. They were portrayed as objects of desire by these non-Mexican men who were ambitious. All right. And then the author says, these novels' favorable portrayal of such women means the Mexican Californianas, right, is noteworthy. So the author is telling us we should note that the Mexican women were favorably portrayed in these novels. Why? Because Mexican American historians have concluded that unflattering literary depictions of Mexicans Mexicans were portrayed unflatteringly, but the Mexican women who were rich were portrayed favorably. This here is clearly a contradiction. The novels show note down this, the novels show that Californianas were shown in a good light in the novels, but we had other novels unflatteringly, that is badly depicting the other Mexicans. And why was this done? This was done to get the support of United States public in the war against Mexico. All right, so got that. So here is the contradiction. And then we are going to talk about the reason behind this. The importance of economic alliances forged through marriages with Californians. Okay, so economic alliances means monetary partnerships were made through marriages with the rich Mexican women. So rich Mexican women marriage with not so rich non-Mexican man. This was important because, okay, transition of their real life economic significance. Whose real life economic significance? The Mexican Californianas. The Californianas were portrayed more favorably than were the others of the same nationality. So the reason behind the contradiction is given. They were portrayed favorably because they had money, partnerships with them had economic importance, and therefore they were shown in a favorable light. So, summary of this paragraph is the author explains how Hispanic laws kind of were responsible for the favorable portrayal of these women in novels. Okay, because otherwise the other Mexicans were not portrayed favorably. So, if we look at the apparent contradiction mentioned in line 29, all right, what is the contradiction? Contradiction is here. Californianas were portrayed more favorably. Others of the same nationality were not portrayed favorably. Again, favorable portrayal of women, unflattering depictions of Mexicans. So if we use this and we go to our options, was it, now read the question stem carefully. Apparent contradiction refers to the discrepancy between. So you have to find the two entities between which the discrepancy was there. So the discrepancy was there between the Californianas versus other Mexicans. Okay? So we have the Mexican Californianas on one hand. So was the discrepancy between the legal status of Mexican women versus their status in US? No. Was it unflattering depiction of Mexicans in novels? Yes. Versus actual public sentiment about the war? No. Existence of many marriages between Californianas versus non-Hispanic merchants and strictures, not even mentioned anywhere. Literary depiction of elite Californianas? Yes, yes. Versus literary depictions of other Mexican individuals? Yes. D is the correct answer. Novelistic portrayals of elite Californianas, privileged lives? No. Actual circumstance of those lives? Definitely not. So E is also out. Correct answer is D. So, guys, most of you, let me see, a lot of you chose D. A lot of you also chose E as well. E, B. So, guys, let me know if this was clear why D is correct. And I hope now all of you can see why it is important to deep dive while you read. You can't start deep diving later on, things get mixed up. Yes, Jaideep, unflattering literary depiction of Mexicans means both Mexican women who were not rich and Mexican men. Because Californianas were elite, were rich women entitled to property rights. C is wrong because there are no strictures mentioned anywhere in the passage, Jaideep. All right. And the contradiction is not between marriages. Read the last sentence of the passage. Read the last sentence of the passage, guys. Clearly mentioned, okay, Californianas were portrayed more favorably compared to others of the same nationality. That means other Mexicans, including both men and women. Strictures are basically laws, rules, regulations. They are not novels. Strictures are more to do with rules and regulations, guidelines, principles. All right. So, guys, what that brings us to the end of this session. What this teaches us that we rely on locally trying to identify the answers. Whenever there is a question about, okay, what does the author mean by apparent contradiction? What does the author mean by this? You jump back into the passage, you reread that part locally. Okay, you search for the answer in that small portion. You forget that the entire passage has to be considered. All right. So you should have here you should have read the full paragraph properly in order to have answered that question confidently. All right. Lot of us choose distorted choices because there are just some familiar words from the passage. We fall for that trap. In fact, there are a lot of other common traps of confusing words, limited scope choices, opposite choices, out of scope choices, distortions, generalizations, irrelevant. So many different categories of wrong answers. And at GMATwiz, we teach you how to categorize your incorrect options into the right bucket. It's very important because then only you will know that what mistake you're making. Are you, if you're choosing, most of the incorrect choices that you choose are distortions, it would mean that you're not reading the answer choice properly. You are missing out on something. All right. If you are often choosing out of scope answers, it means you haven't understood the scope of the passage. So you need to tally your, your understanding with solutions which are written out properly. At GMATwiz, once again to remind you, we write out solutions exactly the way I have explained the entire thing today. All right, and that helps. In fact, once again, let me quickly uh, post the link to the free trial version of the course, just in case you want to take another look at the course. It's there on the screen for you guys, and I will also post shortly, quickly, the link using which you can book a free call with our strategy experts. But before that, let me quickly complete that. You need to tally the your understanding of the passage with the, what is the correct understanding of the passage. If you don't do that, your learning is half. It's very, very important that you understand what you're doing wrong. And we teach you about these traps, okay, in detail through our courseware. All right, we tell you how to categorize your incorrect option into different buckets. I said at the beginning I would talk about time saving irony. That means we rush to read the passage. We think it's going to help us save time. Does it? Let's see. Most students, what they do is they read quickly. They read the passage quickly in the first read. Hardly they take 2 to 3 minutes. But what happens is you just get a rough idea of what is mentioned. If you're not deep diving, if you're rushing through, obviously you're going to get an overall picture and not a proper, precise understanding. With that rough idea, you move to the choices. When you realize you have to go back to the passage to reread portions of the passage, so you land up taking more than 2 minutes per question oftentimes. So overall, for a 4 question passage, you take something between 9 to 11 minutes. At the same time, a GMATwiz student learns to read the passage properly the first time, probably taking double the amount of time. I mean, look at this and look at this, double the amount of time. But there's a crystal clear understanding of the passage, and therefore, when eliminating choices, the time is reduced from this to just this, which means overall there is a difference of 2 to 3 minutes easily. And we've tested this out, guys. So it's just the more time you try to save, the more time you end up taking, guys. All right. And that you need to understand. It's a myth that if you read fast, you'll be able to save time. It's a myth, guys. So I am also posting right now the link using which you can set up a free call with our strategy experts if you are caught up with your preparation at a point where you don't know what to do further. You're stuck. Your scores are not budging from their positions. So, guys, I hope that was an informative session for you guys. I enjoyed myself thoroughly taking this session. I hope you guys enjoyed it too. If you have any queries that you want sorted at this point of time, please go ahead and ask me. I'll be glad to answer your questions. In case I've missed out anybody's queries, pardon me, because at the same time, I can't look at both the screens. So yes, guys, any queries? Territorial California. It's not territorial California. Jadip, where was territorial California? Californianas. Californianas were the Mexican women with property rights, probably living in California. So, guys, let me know if you have any queries pertaining to anything here. You can also connect with us using that mail and that ID. You're welcome, Bhavesh. In fact, thank you, all of you, for participating so heartily and so readily, offering your answers and posting your queries. It's been good to answer your queries. So, guys, all the best. Remember one thing, RCs can be nailed, but be patient with yourself. You need that patience. All right, don't rush. Don't rush. Okay, guys, have a good day if you're just beginning your day, and a very good night if you are ending your days. Take care and stay positive. Bye bye.